چیف گیسٹ کی اجازت سے میں پروگرام شروع کرنا چاہوں گی اور ہم فوراً ہی کلام پاک سے اپنے پروگرام کا آغاز کرتے ہیں. آئیے توقیر صاحب پلیز.
اعوذ باللہ من الشیطان الرجیم. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. قل لعبادي الذين آمنوا يقيموا الصلاة وينفقوا مما رزقناهم سرا وعلانية من قبل أن يأتي يوم لا بيع فيه ولا خلال. الله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وأنزل من السماء ماء فأخرج به من الثمرات رزقا لكم وسخر لكم الفلك لتجري في البحر بأمره وسخر لكم الشمس والقمر دائبين وسخر لكم الليل والنهار وآتاكم من كل ما سألتموه وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَظَلُومٌ كَفَّارٌ. صدق اللہ العظیم.
جیسا کہ آج آپ سارے لوگ جانتے ہیں کہ ہم ایک بک لانچنگ، اور جو بک ہے اس کا نام ہائیڈرو ڈپلومیسی، پریونٹنگ واٹر وار بٹوین نیوکلیئر آرمڈ پاکستان اینڈ انڈیا. اشفاق صاحب ہمارے درمیان موجود ہیں. اس کے علاوہ ہمارے چیف گیسٹ بھی آ چکے ہیں. صرف 2-3 منٹ مزید میں لے کے ہم اپنے پروگرام کا باقاعدہ آغاز کریں گے، اور اس کے لیے میں خالد رحمان صاحب کو پھر دعوت دوں گی. آج جس بک کو لانچ کرنے کے لیے ہم سب یہاں اکٹھے ہوئے ہیں، اس کا کام ہم نے کافی عرصہ پہلے شروع کیا، اور جب کشن گنگا کا ایوارڈ آیا تو میں اشفاق صاحب کو کسی طرح اسی IPS میں جب ہم اس کے دوسری بلڈنگ میں ہوتے تھے تو ہم نے ایک پروگرام کا انعقاد کیا، کیونکہ بہت سارے لوگوں کو بالکل بھی علم نہیں تھا کہ کشن گنگا ایوارڈ کیا ہے، اس کے کیا مضمرات ہیں، کیا پازیٹیوز ہیں، اس کے کیا نیگیٹیوز ہیں. اور پروگرام کر لینے کے بعد مزید پھر اس کے اوپر جب ہم نے سوچنا شروع کیا، کیونکہ ایک پروگرام کرنے سے یہ اتنا اہم جو موضوع تھا وہ اس کے لیے شاید ایک پروگرام ناکافی تھا. اور اس میں جب میں دوبارہ اشفاق صاحب کے پاس گئی اور ہم نے بیٹھ کے جب اس سبجیکٹ کا احاطہ کیا تو ہمیں لگا کہ بہت اہم اس سبجیکٹ کے جو نکات ہیں اس موضوع کے، ان کے اوپر ہمارے ہاں بدقسمتی سے کوئی کام ہی نہیں ہوا ہوا. تو خالد رحمان صاحب کو میں باقاعدہ آج کے پروگرام کے لیے ویلکم نوٹ دینے کے لیے دعوت دیتی ہوں. آئیے سر.
السلام علیکم and a very warm welcome to all of you. Afternoon session where we have gathered to launch the latest IPS publication, Hydro Power Diplomacy, Preventing Water War Between Nuclear-Armed Pakistan and India. Many of you are aware, and I feel pride in sharing, that IPS has just completed 39 years of its establishment. We are in fact marching towards 40th anniversary of the Institute in May 2019. Thanks to Allah and to all those members and associates who have been part of this journey of making some contribution in the policy arena in the form of research, dialogue, publications, and an active human development program. Ladies and gentlemen, a significant and a regular feature at IPS is the promotion of thoughts and ideas through sessions like the one we are holding today, and through people of intellect, wisdom, and insight, like I would say many present in this. That it is always a pleasure and pride for me and our team to have experts and scholars reflecting on topics of concern ranging from domestic to regional and international significance at IPS. Meanwhile, it also gives us some satisfaction that with a motto of promoting policy-oriented research and human development, we have been able to publish around 400 books, making on average 10 books in a year, along with producing more than 1,500 reports and issues of various periodicals. In the same context, it is also a pleasure for me to share that IPS has lately started to expand its publication program. IPS Press, in this regard, has now functioning as publishing arm of the Institute of Policy Studies with a larger and broader mandate. It has been designed, the IPS Press has been designed to encourage and provide a platform for support to senior scholars, experienced practitioners, and thought leaders within institute's scope and framework to reach out and share their knowledge and experience as academic works through printed and online versions. In this backdrop, the book that we are launching today falls in both academic and outreach domains of IPS. It has been produced by a senior and active IPS associate, Ashfaq Mahmood, who has been sharing his insight and analysis with the Institute and its audience among the public as well as policymakers quite frequently, and I should add, quite candidly, which you will agree many a times become necessary to effectively reach out to the target audience. He is member of the IPS Committee on Water, Energy and Climate Change Program. One of the most salient feature of this book, in my view, is that it is an account of developments, their context, and their fallouts by an expert who, for a large part of his professional life, has been deeply involved in the recorded processes. Moreover, this is an archive of events on a technical subject, yet while reading the book, one continuously feels that it has been put in most simple words, such that it becomes a story-like account for the common reader, even with little technical background. Most importantly, it carries a future strategy. One might agree or disagree with the moves he has suggested as solutions, but that's the idea behind producing any such works. Had there been a consensus, I think we would have required a decision and implementation strategy. While in the present situation of stalemate, we need to have discussions and debate on all possible options and try arriving at some consensus, if not the total consensus. The topic is obviously significant, and the book is definitely full of insights. It does not merely strengthen the debate, but also generates it in certain dimensions. I should therefore thank the author for helping IPS in furthering its main objectives of promoting policy-oriented research. The panel today is before you. I am sorry to note that Mr. Jalil Abbas Jilani had to go to Multan because of sudden illness of his mother, and we are also missing Shamsul Mulk Saab, but I hope rest of the speakers would take care of the different dimensions we would like to discuss today. And then we have His Excellency Sardar Masood Khan Saab. He has relevance to the topic in several ways. Though his career as a diplomat and his scholarly instincts too would have been sufficient for his presence here, but in view of the relevance of Kashmir in the context of water, nuclear, regional peace, and general well-being of the region, his current position as the President Azad Government of Jammu and Kashmir makes him one of the most relevant persons to be here as chief guest and speak on the subject. I welcome you all once again and thank you for your presence here.
سب سے پہلے تو میں انسٹیٹیوٹ آف پالیسی اسٹڈیز اور خصوصی طور پہ جناب خالد صاحب کا شکریہ ادا کرتا ہوں کہ انہوں نے یہ آج کی محفل سجائی اور خصوصی طور پہ ان کے انیشل ریمارکس جو انہوں نے سب کے گوش گزار کیے. جہاں تک اس کتاب کا تعلق ہے تو اس میں میرا لکھنے کے لیے جو اس کو انٹرسٹ بنا وہ سب سے بڑی وجہ یہ تھی کہ اللہ تعالیٰ نے مجھے یہ آنر دیا کہ میں سیکٹری واٹر اینڈ پاور جب میں 2004 میں نے سیکٹریشپ کا عہدہ سنبھالا جون میں، تو اس کے فوری بعد مجھے سیکٹری لیول ٹاکس کے لیے ہندوستان جانا پڑا. اس کے بعد میں ہندوستان اور پاکستان کے پانی کے معاملات میں کشن گنگا، ولر براج اور اس کے بعد اب پکادل پروجیکٹ، بگلیہار ڈیم میں انوالو رہا. خصوصی طور پہ میرا جو رول تھا وہ بگلیہار ڈیم میں پاکستان کی ٹیم کو نیوٹرل ایکسپرٹ کے سامنے لیڈ کرنا، بلکہ اس سے پہلے یہ فیصلہ کرنا کہ ہمیں فار دی فرسٹ ٹائم ان دی ہسٹری آف دس ٹریٹی ہمیں اس معاملے کو ڈسپیوٹ ریزولوشن کی طرف لے کے جانا ہے. جب میں اس ایشو کو لے کر انڈیا کے ساتھ ڈسکشن کرتا تھا اور جب اس کے بعد میرا ایکسپوجر نیوٹرل ایکسپرٹ کے ساتھ ہوا اور وہاں ہماری ٹیم نے اپنی پریزنٹیشن کی، تو مجھے یہ محسوس ہوا کہ جو کچھ ٹرانسپائر کرتا ہے ود ان دا میٹنگ رومس، ود ان دا فور والز آف دی ڈسکشن پارلیز وچ ٹیک پلیس، اس کا جو ریئل جسٹ ہے وہ لوگوں تک نہیں پہنچتا. دی پیپل ایٹ لارج دے آر فیڈ انفارمیشن آئدر فرام ہیئرسے اور فرام ویسٹڈ انٹرسٹ. لہٰذا ایک بہت بڑا گیپ ہے جو کہ لوگوں کو یہ کلیئر نہیں ہوتا کہ دراصل ڈسکشن کس بات پہ ہو رہی ہے، جبکہ سینٹیمنٹس جو ہیں وہ بھڑکا دیے جاتے ہیں. بہت سارے لوگ یہ پوچھتے تھے جب ہم ہندوستان جاتے تھے تو سب سے پہلے ان کا میڈیا جو ہم پہ فوکس کرتا تھا، پہلا سوال یہ پوچھتا تھا کہ پاکستان ڈیمز کے خلاف ہے، پاکستان نے ٹریٹی کے اندر ہندوستان کو جن ڈیمز کی اجازت دی ہے ان کو کیوں روک رہا ہے، یہ کس طرح ہے کہ پاکستان جو ڈاؤن اسٹریم رائپیرین ہے وہ ہماری ساورنٹی پہ انکروچ کرے وغیرہ وغیرہ. تو ایک عجیب سینٹیمنٹل سا ایک ماحول بن جاتا تھا. جب یہاں آئے تو پاکستان میں لوگ یہ سمجھتے تھے کہ شاید یہ ہم اس ٹریٹی سے ان کو ابائڈ بائی نہیں کروا سک رہے. مجھے یہ بتایا گیا ہے کہ کیونکہ یہاں پہ کچھ باہر کے حضرات بھی ہیں تو میں اب اس کو زیادہ تر کوشش کروں گا کہ انگریزی میں آپ سے بات کروں. So my fundamental concern was that the people who actually matter, the people for whom the water is important, are not being fed with the right information. There's a big gap between what is the reality, what is the provision in the treaty, what does the law says, and what is being fed out. So keeping that in mind, I decided to write a book. I thought that it is my obligation, being a participant or leader in some of the parleys, to give the public and to give the intelligentsia and to give the people who read the Indus Water Treaties issues carefully the real picture as to what has been happening. So from that point of view, I decided to write this book and embarked upon it for a few years. In the beginning, I would like to just recollect some of the principles of the treaty which actually later on resulted into some of the controversies between the parties. As you know, that Indus Water Treaty basically is a treaty for division of waters. It is not a sharing of water or sharing of benefits. It's a division of water where 3 rivers were allocated to India called Eastern rivers, which you can see on the map. And there are 3 rivers which are called Western rivers given to Pakistan. The waters of these rivers were allotted in a way exclusively for the countries for which the rivers were meant, except that there were some provisions that allowed minor deviations from the principle of exclusive use. So as far as the Western rivers are concerned, basically it was allowed to India to carry out some non-consumptive uses, which included construction of run-of-river dams, and there was a small provision for the storage facilities as well. The controversies which have taken place in the recent past relate to the run-of-river projects. In these projects, since the provision was made allowing India to make dams on the Western rivers for electricity generation, the writers of the Indus Waters Treaty had actually given very due care that they added an annexure D and E at the end of the report, at the end of the treaty, which gives the criteria for making the dams. The whole purpose of that criterion was that under the garb of making run-of-river projects, India should not be able to control or store or interfere in the waters of the Western rivers, which was allocated to Pakistan. So every time India proposed a project on the Western rivers where they were allowed dams, in fact, there was no cap on the number of dams that were to be constructed by India, so they could construct as many dams as they would under the Indus Waters Treaty. So Pakistani side was very, very careful. They were very keenly examining as to what are the provisions of the criteria and whether Indian designs have complied with it or not. Whether India is going to control more water and interfere with it, or whether India is going to get more storage than it is allowed to store. So this had been the fundamental principle of the treaty, and this is where we actually noticed violations. Every design that we received, starting from Salal Dam, then Baglia Dam, then Kishanganga Dam, then currently on the annual, the Pakadul Dam, the Pakistani engineers examined and found that there was a provision in the dam which would allow them more than what they are otherwise entitled to. So keeping in mind that since there is no cap on the number of dams on the Western rivers, if you multiply a small variation with the number of dams, then it becomes significant deviation, a significant storage that can affect the flow of water to Pakistan. So Pakistan was raising these issues again and again and was therefore ultimately led to a conclusion that the matters cannot be settled mutually. These have to be taken to the neutral expert. Every time Pakistan raised these issues, Pakistan found that India would dilly-dally in giving the information, in getting to the table to resolve the issues, and then finally, one fine morning, we will discover that India has started building the dam. This has been the case starting from Baglia Dam, Salal Dam, Kishanganga Dam, Vular Barrage, and even Pakadul, which is at this time going on. So again, when we revisited the treaty and we tried to find out where is the clause that India would not build a dam when there are objections from Pakistan, the only thing we found was that it says that India will give Pakistan its design 6 months in advance of start of construction. Pakistan will be given 3 months to respond and give objections, and thereafter the treaty was silent. So perhaps it was in good faith that whenever there are objections, then those will be addressed, and only then the project implementation will be started. But exploiting this lacuna, the Indian side will start and keep on dilly-dallying and keep on making the projects go forward, and in this way complete the projects. Then what we noticed was that India was playing a Kashmir card. Now they were saying, they were trying to build an opinion in Kashmir as if Pakistan is against the development in Kashmir. So they would say that Pakistan's objections on Vular Barrage or on dams are actually obstructing the development in Jammu and Kashmir. The fact of the matter, which was not publicly known and has not been well publicized, is that a large amount of electricity that is being produced by run-of-river projects is actually being consumed in the northern grid of India, and it is actually exploitation of the resource. Similarly, the Vular Barrage if you go and ask the people who are there, one of the biggest objections of the people was that because of the Ular barrage, there was so much inundation of the land behind it that they were reacting to it. But the correct picture was not before the people. Another issue which was the most critical issue is that what I would like to show you, there are 5 spillway gates that are marked, which are crossed. Now, Pakistan had a feeling, this is a cross-section of the Baglehar Dam. Pakistan had a feeling that once these gates are there, they will be able to control 164,000 acre-feet of water. So Pakistan had objected to it because the treaty does not allow India to control water. India took a stance that it will be used for sediment sluicing and sediment flushing. Before the neutral expert, we proved that these sluicing and sedimentation cannot take place if the treaty's provisions are kept in view. But the neutral expert, after agreeing with us, then stepped beyond the treaty and gave it a permission to India to make these gates in the light of the international practices rather than in the light of the Indus Waters Treaty. So this fact was not known to many of the people, and so you could see many news items in the press. Thereafter, we went to the Court of Arbitration, where we took this case before the panel of 7 judges. And they unanimously decided in favor of Pakistan that the interpretation of Pakistan with regards to the actual storage of water is correct. Now, thereafter, once we got this, India had no basis, no locus standi to go for this kind of a design. But they have gone in for sort of make a template. It has been used for Kishan Ganga, it is being used for Pakadul, it is being used for any other project that they are coming up with. So they are not complying with the decisions of the international bodies. Now the question was that when we tried to press for it and when we tried to ask India to ensure that they comply with the international practices, we actually were given no answer. In fact, as you know, that at this time, the case of Pakadul and Kishan Ganga project is stuck in the World Bank, and the arbitration or the Court of Arbitration has not yet met. Now, instead of responding positively, we could then hear Narendra Modi from India making strange kind of statements. He made a statement a couple of years ago, about a year ago, in elections in Punjab on their side, saying that I promise that IWT will be annulled. Now, we will not let water flow to Pakistan. Similarly, he said, blood and water cannot flow together. So this gives me a much bigger concern that it is not just the people who are not really in full picture. The leaders, including the Prime Minister of India, are then projecting it as if that they are the ones who are sovereign and they can do whatever they want. In reaction to this, I could see that there were discussions in Pakistan amongst various intelligentsia groups that this can lead to a nuclear war. If Pakistan's water is strangulated, Pakistan's agriculture and economy suffers, then we will have no option but to push our way, because that's our lifeline, and it may lead into a nuclear war. So I was really concerned, and that's why you see in the topic that I have selected brings out the fear of nuclear war, and then it talks about how to prevent it. Now, on top of what was going on, there were a number of issues which were either inadequately covered or were not fully addressed in the main annexes and main body of the Indus Waters Treaty related to the data. For instance, we were asked from India, what is the data, whether water is being stolen or not, and whether there should be telemetry or not. They won't give you any reply. There was an issue of groundwater. Now, in the area surrounding near Lahore, across the border, there are so many tube wells and groundwater being exploited that the water table on the Pakistani side is going down. There's an issue of pollution. The Hydra drain is being polluted by washing in the chemicals from agriculture and so on and so forth, and the population waste and so on. But as a result of that, not much is being heeded too. Now, it also does not take into account the climate change. Because of the climate change, the things are changing. The issue has not been addressed. the population is increasing, the demand is increasing. So all of these are creating irritants which are becoming real issues, and I would say that it's like simmering of issues under surface, and one of these days this will blow up like a volcano. Because you are not complying with the decisions, you are failing to comply, people do not know what exactly is being not done by India. Similarly, there are issues which need to be addressed. And finally, I would say that the Indus Waters Treaty says that it is meant, it's right in the preamble, it says that it is meant for the most appropriate use of the Indus waters, the most appropriate use and most economic use. Now, when it talks about Indus waters, it does not just mean the water on the surface, which is the rivers, but it also means the water which is seeping into the ground and is the one which is the groundwater. So, in other words, issues are being brushed aside, emotive statements are being made, people's sentiments are being ignited. On both sides, people are talking about. On one side, one side is talking about sovereignty and ownership, and the other side is talking about ensuring that its rights are protected. I felt that there was a real danger of war. So I thought I need to blow a whistle. I need to come up with something which at least goes in the media, which goes in the intelligentsia, it goes in the libraries, that people read it and understand that there is something which is like to blow like a war, and it will be probably a big war if it ever happens. Now, I then looked for some research. I looked for papers produced and the books produced in different universities. In particular, I will mention Oregon State University, which is a big repository of the treaties. I looked into MIT, Harvard, Tufts University has a big resource, King's College London, University of Dundee, and so on. Now, one thing which actually surprised me was that there was a sort of a complacency. The literature would say, because I think Northern America and European countries have actually resolved these issues years ago, there's sort of complacency that issues are there, but history shows, the statistics shows that wars do not take place, and therefore things will slowly and gradually settle. So I felt that there is sort of an ostrich approach, that forget about danger, one day it will automatically resolve and something will happen and will take care of. So I felt it is very necessary that I must blow the whistle and must know the community, the world, the people who matter, that it is not just a question of Pakistan, India, it's going to be a nuclear war, and the nuclear war can have repercussions for all over the place. So we need to wake up and attend this issue so that the war can be prevented. So that's the title of my poem. Now, having said that, I thought that I should not stop by just making a noise, describing the issues. I should take the next step of presenting some solutions. So that's what I have done. I thought that the best way under the circumstances to move forward is the Hydra diplomacy. And Hydra diplomacy does not mean, to my mind, having a few photographs, meeting a few diplomats, having a good cup of tea, and later on saying that we had very good parleys, which ambiguous statements which tells you nothing, an aide memoir which will continue forever. So what I meant was that we should be proactive. Actually, I thought that our side is not very proactive. We need to write, we need to approach intelligentsias, we need to mobilize think tanks, we need to mobilize the embassies, we need to go everywhere possible. And if needed, go to the neutral experts and Court of Arbitration and International Courts of Justice and educate them as to what is Pakistan presenting. We are asking, please implement the decision of the neutral expert and Court of Arbitration. Why can't that be a message that can go across? Why can't the people begin to think that there are solutions which are being presented? And that means that our delegations, our intelligentsia, everybody should be involved, and we should propagate our point of view and should move away from wasting time just by bilateral analysis. Because for years, for Baghlehar Dam, I could find that for 8 or 9 years, the dialogue was just bilateral. And it was only when we came out and went to the neutral expert that the things started moving. India has a passion to keep everything bilateral because that gives its hegemony and that gives it the lever. We must break that shackle. In fact, Indus Waters Treaty was also a multilateral effort. Pakistan and India were in loggers drawn in 1951 when the World Bank jumped in, and only then we could resolve this matter. So I think we need to take this message very seriously and make our effort to prevent the war and go all over the place with the Hydra diplomatic message so that the people understand and move forward. So this was my humble contribution. I thought that I make my contribution. There will be people who read, who have different opinions. They may have different views. They may have different strategies. But my contribution would be to at least ignite that kind of a debate, to initiate that kind of process so that at least the world at large knows what is important and what needs to be done. So I would like to finish my presentation here by just showing you one small video that will give you an idea that why I want to say that the concern that the war is only for Pakistan, India is not correct. It is for the entire world.
That the Indian and Pakistani generals never even gave us a thought about it. My colleagues, Luke Oman and Alan Roebuck, calculated the spread of smoke after a war between India and Pakistan. It only takes about 2 weeks for the smoke to cover the entire Earth. And it would rise to altitudes between 20 and 50 miles above the surface. At those altitudes, it never rained. The smoke would stay there for years. This farmer, maybe in Europe or in the United States, but many thousands of miles from Pakistan and India, is looking at the smoky sky above him and down at the crops that had died in his field from lack of light and cold temperatures. It's estimated that in a war between India and Pakistan, that we would lose 10 to 40% of the yields of corn, wheat, and rice for years afterward because of the bad weather. The entire world only has enough food to feed the population for 60 days unless agriculture produces more food. Ira Helfand, a member of the Nobel Peace Prize-winning International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, has estimated that 1 to 2 billion people would die after a war between India and Pakistan of starvation. And after a full-scale nuclear war, temperatures would plunge below ice age conditions. We would be in a nuclear winter. No crops would grow. It's estimated that 90% of the population of the planet would starve to death, and civilization would be destroyed. And no one would be safe. Not those in countries with no nuclear weapons, not those in countries that didn't participate in the war, and not those on the other side of the planet from where the explosions occurred. No one would be safe.
So I finish, and thank you all for listening to me, and I hope that you will carry this work forward and will prevent the kind of disaster that you just now saw. Thank you.
Bahut shukriya, sir. Thank you very much. We have a panel of discussants who are going to further share some light and their views on the work that has been just introduced to us. First, we have Ambassador retired Shafqat Kakakhel, sir. So I would invite Ambassador retired Shafqat Kakakhel.
At the outset, I would like to congratulate my friend Ashfaq Mahmood for writing this book, Hydra Diplomacy, Preventing Water War between Nuclear-Armed Pakistan and India. I would also like to congratulate IPS for publishing this book and for inviting me to attend and participate in the formal launching of the book. And it's always a pleasure to speak in a meeting presided over by my dear friend and our distinguished diplomat and now president of Azad Jammu and Kashmir. As Ashfaq Mahmood mentioned, the special merit of this book, the book that we are launching today, lies in the fact that it is not an academic exercise. It is the work of an individual who is academically sound, but who had the rare distinction of being at the helm of the country's water resource and power ministry for 4 years. And during that period, he participated in handling 2 of the 4 major issues that have arisen between India and Pakistan since the treaty was signed almost, 58 years ago to be precise, namely the Baglehar project on the Chenab and the Kishan Ganga project on a tributary of the Jhelum. Since his retirement, Ashfaq has participated in the activities of think tanks and research organizations, and his effort has always been to ensure that Pakistan continues to benefit from the only river basin to which it has access, namely the Indus River Basin, and which comprises almost 24 tributaries, but the 7 major rivers, apart from 6 tributaries apart from the Indus itself, and the Kabul, all of them originate in territories across its frontiers. So the question of hydrodiplomacy, or dealing with Pakistan's continued access to the Indus Water Treaty, is an existential issue, given the critical importance that agriculture plays in our economy and in the livelihoods of our people. Any disruption, any reduction in the flows of the Indus River Basin, whether it's caused by action or inaction by India or Afghanistan, whether it is caused by natural phenomena like droughts and floods, or whether it's caused by the impacts of climate change, will have negative implications for Pakistan water and therefore Pakistan's economic and national security. So in the short time that I have, I'd like to basically introduce the book. The book has 3 main parts. Part 1 is the introductory part, where the background of the treaty is recalled and the main provisions of the treaty are recalled. The most important 2 features of the Indus Water Treaty are that while the treaty gave the western rivers, the 3 western rivers, Indus, Chenab and Jhelum, to Pakistan, and these 3 rivers represent the bulk of the water assets of the Indus Basin, almost 78%. India was allowed both consumptive and non-consumptive uses. Irrigation would be consumptive, and run-of-the-river projects for power generation are non-consumptive because the bulk of the water has to return to its mother river. And the other main feature, an important feature, which is the envy of the other countries of South Asia that share waters with India, Nepal and Bangladesh, is the very elaborate dispute settlement mechanism. There is an internationally guaranteed dispute settlement mechanism. And the fact is that all the issues, small, medium size, and large, that have arisen have been resolved and are capable of being resolved under the framework provided for in the Indus Water Treaty. Now, I would like to mention that what Ashfaq does is he deals with 2 categories of issues. Issues that are that have been discussed and are derived from the actual implementation of the treaty. That is the first category of issues. In the second category are issues that were not addressed by the treaty, because remember, the treaty was negotiated during the 1950s. It was signed in 1960 when international water law was virtually non-existent. The only international law, the first international law that came was the Helsinki principles, and that was in 1966, 6 years after the treaty was signed. So, as far as the issues that pertain to the implementation of the treaty, as I mentioned, India is allowed to use the waters of the western rivers while they are on its territory or territories administered by it, such as Jammu and Kashmir, through the run-of-the-river projects, which should ideally involve the least use of the flows before they return to the river. The problems that we have and the suggestions, India often fails to provide timely information about its projects. And sometimes Pakistan comes to know about the projects from newspapers. The second problem is that India provides information, but inadequate. It does not cater to all the requirements of Pakistan to see whether its interests are harmed or are not harmed. So Ashfaq Mahmood naturally suggests that there should be an agreement on the timely provision of information. The third issue is that there is too much time is wasted in correspondence between the Permanent Commission, the commissioners of the Permanent Commission, on give us this information, and then the information is not provided on time, and years are lost before Pakistan can raise its final position. So Ashfaq Mahmood suggests that the two countries agree on a time framework to agree to settle whether Pakistan is comfortable with the project or whether it would like to go for arbitration. And if arbitration is to be resorted to, which one? There are two methods of arbitration in the treaty: the neutral expert, who should deal with technical issues, and the court of arbitration, which should deal with both technical and juridical issues. So he suggests that that should be done within a time framework. Similarly, Ashfaq Mahmood mentions the issues that were not addressed by the Indus Water Treaty because of the reasons that I gave, and in that, the first issue is that while India is allowed to build hydropower projects, there is no upper ceiling. There is no limit. There is no cap, as Ashfaq called it. So India has been building virtually cascades of projects on the three rivers. And Pakistan's fear is that the cumulative effect of these cascades of projects, dozens of projects, gives India the ability to manipulate and control the flows of water, which it can use to its detriment whenever it wishes, particularly during the time of hostilities between the two countries. So Ashfaq suggests that there should be a study on the cumulative impact of the cascades of projects. The second problem is watershed management. The Indus Water Treaty does mention in one place the pollution of rivers, but does not have the kind of safeguards that are contained in subsequent legal documents such as the UN 1997 Convention on non-navigational uses of international waters. Watershed management is extremely important because at the moment, all the municipal runoff, all the agricultural and industrial runoff is freely dumped into the rivers that enter Pakistan. The Jhelum comes heavily polluted when it enters Azad Kashmir. And the same is true of Chenab. So the quality of water is important, and there should be, in Ashfaq's view, a joint study. Another issue is that the eastern rivers, Ravi, Sutlej, Beas, which were given to India, what India has done is completely divert the waters of these three and increase its use of the waters from 8 million acre-feet before partition to almost 25 million acre-feet. They've even taken a canal to Rajasthan after exhausting the uses in Haryana and Punjab. So with the result that on the Pakistan side, the only water that those rivers have is during the floods. And there are disastrous ecological and environmental implications. So in the Court of Arbitration, basically in the Kishan Ganga Award, upheld the principle of environmental flows. The other question is that, unfortunately, because international law was non-existent, the position of aquifers was not recognized by the Indus Water Treaty. The new convention, the 1997 convention, does. So Ashfaq suggests that there should be a survey and study and monitoring of the aquifers, because the aquifers are an integral part of the hydrology of a river. If you interfere with the aquifers, you interfere with the flows of the rivers. And so this has to be dealt with. Ashfaq suggests that trust, the lack of trust, is a major problem in the implementation of the treaty and the embitterment of the political relations between the two countries. And a lot of it is because of the Article 6 of the treaty, which pertains to the exchange of data, and that is not being implemented in its entirety. He recommends a whole spectrum of issues on which the two countries should share data so that they are satisfied, whether it's the groundwater, whether it's the effects of the cascades of the projects, whether it's the quality of water, whether it is the other aspects of watershed management, that there should be, in fact, a task force under the Permanent Indus Commission, which should supervise and guide and ensure that the data collection is complete and it takes place. So basically, Ashfaq time and again refers to the commitment of both Pakistan and India to the inviolability of the Indus Water Treaty. So his main objective, which he himself admitted, is to ensure that irresponsible political statements such as those that have been made by Prime Minister Modi about bilateral relations in general and about water issues in particular, the so-called water and blood cannot go together, and promising the province of Punjab every drop of its water to be protected, that these, and we have our own Modis in Pakistan, even threatening to use nuclear arms to protect Pakistan's water. So it is in the interest of both countries to discourage and dissuade those elements by ensuring that they cooperate in ensuring the respect and implementation of the Indus Water Treaty in good faith and deal with issues that were not addressed by the treaty. Congratulations once again, Ashfaq, and congratulations to the IPS for publishing this truly encyclopedic and magisterial review of the water issues between Pakistan and India. And I thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Chief Guest, Sardar Masood Khan Sahab, President Azad Jammu and Kashmir, Mr. Khalid Rahman, Executive President, Institute of Policy Studies, Mr. Ashfaq Mahmood, the author of the book Hydra Diplomacy, Preventing War Between Nuclear-Armed Pakistan and India, my fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Ashfaq Mahmood, who is a dear friend and colleague, has made a commendable effort by writing this short and concise but extremely informative and useful book on a subject that is of vital importance for water security of Pakistan and for regional peace in the South Asian subcontinent. I must congratulate him on this achievement, and I must also congratulate the Institute of Policy Studies for supporting this effort. This book could not have been launched at a more appropriate time, a time when the bilateral political relationship between the two largest countries in South Asia is highly acrimonious. The diplomatic relations are at a nadir, resulting from a complete and prolonged rejection of dialogue by India, and the water disputes between the two countries have assumed alarming proportions. In a short span of just over 200 pages, this information-packed book, which can justifiably qualify as a valuable piece of literature on the subject of Indus Basin water disputes between Pakistan and India, covers all important aspects such as genesis and brief history of the water issues and disputes, negotiations for a solution culminating in Indus Waters Treaty 1960, post-treaty water issues and their nature and attempts for resolution, and finally Hydra diplomacy to prevent the disputes leading to a water war between two nuclear-armed neighbors and adversaries. Thus, the book should be of equal interest and value to general readers and students who want to acquire a broad information and knowledge about the water disputes between the two countries, as well as to the engineers and water professionals interested in a detailed account of above-mentioned aspects as well as salient features of the treaty, particularly the river sharing arrangements, river division arrangements rather, the dispute resolution mechanisms, a chronology of development of post-treaty disputes, and the attempts made to resolve them. Other important aspects of interest to this class of readers include a detailed account of Bagliar and Kishanganga hydroelectric plants with their design and engineering features, giving rise to disputes, the grounds and the arguments advanced by both parties to support their relative stances, the differences in legal interpretation of relevant clauses of the treaty, and a detail of the decisions given by the neutral expert and the Court of Arbitration in the two cases. Now, this must be particularly noted that the decision given by the neutral expert in the case of Bagliar project was outside the Indus Waters Treaty. Now, as Ashfaq Mahmood Sahab has rightly pointed out elsewhere, that both India and Pakistan have been considering this treaty as sacrosanct so far. But here is a situation in which a neutral expert of international caliber and standard has gone outside the treaty and given a decision based on international practices rather than the provisions of the treaty. So this is highly objectionable from Pakistan's point of view, and that is why we decided to go to the Court of Arbitration, because there are legal minds sitting at that forum which will look into the legal aspects of the treaty which bind India to those legal aspects, and it cannot go beyond the treaty. But the Indians are unreasonably adamant in this case, and now we are at a standoff with regard to the appointment of a neutral expert or a court of arbitration in the next project, which is Kishan Ganga hydroelectric project. The author has also described the reasons for the current standoff in the case of Kishan Ganga hydroelectric project and other projects, as the adoption of dispute resolution mechanism has itself come under objection by India, also challenging the authority of the World Bank to take a decision in this regard. Thus, highly complicated technical and legal issues have now emerged which defy an easy solution within the ambit of the treaty. This should be an issue of special interest to legal experts involved in dispute resolution proceedings. The author has rightly devoted the last 3 chapters of the book to hydrodiplomacy to avert a water war. These should be of a special interest to diplomats who have been or may be involved in diplomatic negotiations to find negotiated solutions to the otherwise thorny issues defying a solution under the treaty in the current vitiated environment. Since the treaty has itself become entangled in controversies due to the biased and one-sided interpretation by India and its obdurate attitude in this regard, the only hope left for saving the treaty from a collapse leading to water war is in diplomacy and confidence building. This would be a win-win situation for both countries, as war is in no one's interest and has never solved any problems. And as all of us must have seen in that short video clip that was shown by Ashfaq Mahmood sahab, the horrors of a nuclear conflict between India and Pakistan are so huge that no one can even imagine a nuclear war between these two neighbor countries. Now, I think I should describe in a little detail the hydrodiplomacy part of the book, because this is what the gist of the main part of the book is. Chapter 10 discusses the factors that were key to the original successful application of hydrodiplomacy, resulting in signing of the Indus Waters Treaty 1960 itself. It also refers to certain shortcomings of the treaty by way of not addressing or not anticipating certain issues. Now, in this regard, I may be allowed to suggest that the issues have become prominent in hindsight. At the time the treaty was under negotiation, the focus was mainly on ensuring adequate and continued supply of water to Pakistan's integrated canal irrigation network to ensure our food security, and hence the construction of massive replacement works under the Indus Waters Treaty. The other objective was to make an ostensibly equitable division of river waters between Pakistan and India acceptable to both countries. Now, trying to address other water issues, though important in their own right, would have prolonged the negotiations and made them more complicated. This probably might have been the reason why the treaty only focused on the issues at hand and did not go beyond it. Chapter 11 discusses the ingredients of water war. This part describes the events that created unaddressed or as well as unforeseen issues and possible solutions to those issues to avoid water war. And finally, Chapter 12 suggests a strategy for resolution of the post-treaty issues. It may be added here that Mr. Ashfaq Mahmood has flagged some very relevant and important facts with regard to water issues in the preface to the book, which I would also like to highlight here in view of their importance. Firstly, that the treaty should not be considered a panacea for solving all the water issues we are faced with. Secondly, that apart from robustness of the treaty, there might be other reasons that prevented the collapse of the treaty during wars with India. These include non-availability of means to India in 1965 and 1971 to control or obstruct flow of water to Pakistan, and the nuclear deterrence possessed by both countries during subsequent years. It must be mentioned here that any negotiations that can and should be undertaken to resolve the issues cropping up from time to time require a certain level of favorable political environment. The leadership in both Pakistan and India had much higher levels of mutual goodwill and political sagacity that enabled the conclusion of the treaty in 1960. Any attempt to resolve the current water issues between the two countries by friendly negotiations should therefore be preceded by efforts to cool down the current political temperatures and minimize the prevailing high level of acrimony and bitterness between the two countries. It has rightly been observed by the author that both Pakistan and India consider the Indus Waters Treaty as sacrosanct. Well, that was the position before the current government in India came to power, and their view is slightly different. They even believe, although they have not officially said so, but they have given out statements which make it clear that they want to annul the treaty. But I'm afraid if any attempt is made to revisit the treaty, to address the issues that were left unaddressed in it, as some of the people here in Pakistan suggest, or the newly arising issues like climate change impact, it would be disastrous. Why? Because once the treaty is reopened or revisited for a review, I suppose its operation will be suspended. And once the operation of the treaty is suspended, India will have a free hand with all the rivers that flow into Pakistan. Therefore, it would be a Pandora's box that we would never be able to close again. The best course would be to negotiate additional treaties which should form addenda to the old one. To conclude, this highly commendable piece of water literature deserves to be placed in the libraries of all universities and institutions of higher learning in the field of engineering and technology, all institutions and organizations dealing with water resources management, all institutions and think tanks dealing with India-Pakistan relations, and the ministries of law, foreign affairs, water resources, climate change, defense, and provincial governments. It should form essential reading in training academies for civil servants and diplomatic officers. So with these few words, I would like to again congratulate Mr. Ashfaq Mahmood, who is a very dear friend and colleague, and the Institute of Policy Studies for publishing this book at a very appropriate time. And it's a highly valuable and commendable effort and a commendable addition to the literature on Indus Basin waters issues. Thank you very much for your patient listening.
Now we have the chief guest, President AJK Sardar Masood Khan sir, to come over here and give his speech. We have got copies of the book available outside. If any of you would like to have, you can have it from here. Thank you. Thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. Khalid Rahman, Executive President, IPS, Mr. Ashfaq Mahmood, who is the author of the book which has been launched today, Ambassador Shafqat Kakakhel, Mr. Mirza Hamid Hasan, and Ms. Amina Sohail. Assalamu alaikum. Ladies and gentlemen, assalamu alaikum. The topic is very serious, and while sitting on the podium, I was looking at you. You're all looking very serious. So, for God's sake, cheer up. After all, we are launching a book today. Second, that the audience present here is very, very impressive, not just in quantity, but in quality. And I know many of the friends who are sitting here, and they have their own expertise in diverse fields. So congratulations, IPS, for assembling so many people who have such multiple backgrounds, and they are here to discuss Hydra diplomacy. Also, congratulations to you, Mr. Khalid Rahman, for on the 39th anniversary of the IPS. IPS is a happening place. You publish books, you gather people, you gather critical mass for getting information and analysis on issues of national importance, which have international dimensions. So congratulations. Very few people in Pakistan publish books. And fewer publish books on substantive issues.
And Mr. Ashfaq Mahmood has published a book, and he is publishing a book on a very, very important substantive issue. And his note, as it was pointed out by Ambassador Shafqat Kakakhel, that it is not a book which is written by an academic. It is backed by practical hands-on experience. So congratulations for bringing out this book. I used to call it water diplomacy, but hydro diplomacy sounds more impressive. So I always used to call it water diplomacy, which doesn't give a theoretical framework. It starts the entire exercise with the practical realities pertaining to hydro diplomacy, and then goes on to substantiate and supplement it with a case study. And the case study is Indus Waters Treaty. And it's very difficult for many authors to write about a concrete treaty which unfolds many manifestations of hydro diplomacy, and many facets have been captured in this book. Now, I read the book with great interest. Very few books are read these days. In fact, my wife says that nobody reads books these days. They are for libraries, and that the people use their handheld devices to get information, and even to contribute their own thoughts. That said, I read the book. Mr. Ashfaq Mahmood has identified some essential ingredients for the success of hydro diplomacy. And let me list them. They are building mutual trust, third-party intercession, commitment of the leadership, knowledge-based approach. And here we say something very profound, that when you're conducting hydro diplomacy, it is not enough that you have sufficient knowledge as a bureaucrat or as an expert. You should have grounding in engineering, science, social sciences, law, diplomacy, environment, and climate change. So only very few people, very few negotiators would have that kind of exposure and that kind of mastery over different disciplines. He's also said that in this process we must strengthen institutions, and we should respect their conclusions. Because if we do not do that, we would be compromising here or there. He's also warned us that it would be a serious mistake to take wrong, short-sighted decisions because of the fear of the backlash either of your masters or of your constituents at large. He's also said that IWT, as a matter of fact, is an example of successful hydro diplomacy. And again, he's substantiated that there was a third party in the form of the World Bank. There was also means for implementation because you had the Indus Basin Fund. And he also has asked the civil society, think tanks, media, and other actors of civil society to support such a process to make it successful. He's also said that our approaches should not necessarily be legacy-based, because it's a progressive, dynamic process, and it cannot be frozen in time, and it cannot be a captive of the primordial attitudes that we have towards each other. When he was talking about the ingredients, he also said ingredients for the success of the hydro diplomacy. He said one essentials was timely completion. The other was financial resources to implement the treaty. And he has also advised us not to pursue a zero-sum game. He says that it should be a positive-sum game or a win-win cooperation paradigm that we should follow. And he also goes back to the Indus Water Treaty and points out its limitations. And one of the limitations is that it ignored the following aspects: groundwater, ecological impact, desertification, water quality, flora and fauna, the all pertinent dimensions. And we all know that because these aspects were not incorporated into the original treaty, they were not anticipated, we are facing problems all over the Indus water basin. Let me also tell you that the blame about water shortage or water scarcity or water stress does not exclusively pertain to the Indus Water Treaty. It's a much bigger question. Pakistan is a water-stressed country. And I was reading some statistics. From 1990 to 2015, per capita water availability declined from 2,172 to 1,306 cubic meters. It has declined further. There was a report by the IMF which says that now the availability of water in Pakistan is about 1,017 cubic meters. And the situation is getting worse. Pakistan is the third most water-stressed country in the world. And it would get to the point of absolute insecurity by 2025. So a big crisis is looming large, and we have to prepare ourselves for that. This has something to do with the Indus Water Treaty, but not everything to do with the Indus Water Treaty. There are many factors, urban growth, population growth that we've seen. We've also seen that we have not built reservoirs. We have not invested heavily in the dams. There are warnings that Pakistan may dry run by 2025. That Pakistan may run dry by 2025. And the World Resources Institute says that, and this has been supported by the UNDP, that all parts of Pakistan would be affected. And that includes the north of the country, which has 5,000 glaciers, and what the UNDP representative calls the hyper deserts in the south. Now, we're conducting our hydro diplomacy in the backdrop of severe tensions between India and Pakistan. And they're not limited to water. The key question, the cause of war, the cause of tension between India and Pakistan, the casus belli, as an international lawyer would say, is Kashmir. Because Kashmir is not resolved, we have water problems. There were two cardinal sins that Pakistan committed in 1947. Pakistan created Pakistan, and because of that act, India was divided, and India did not forgive Pakistan for that sin.
And the second was that the people of Jammu and Kashmir wanted to become part of Pakistan, this new state of Pakistan. I don't know whether the original sin or the first cardinal sin has been forgotten, forgiven, but the second is definitely not, and it has in the minds of Indian decision makers and politicians firmly linked to Kashmir. The problems of water and Kashmir are interlinked in their minds. Ambassador Shafqat Kakakhel mentioned a cascade of dams that India is building on the rivers Chenab and Jhelum. And here's my list. Pakuldal. There is also Lower Karnai. There is also Sawalkot. Kishan Ganga is a faith accompli. Bagliar is a faith accompli. And Miyar and many others. Our waters would be diverted massively. And our own tributaries in Pakistan and Azad Kashmir would be affected. In Azad Kashmir, we have three rivers. We have the river Jhelum, we have the river Neelam, and we also have the river Punch. They are all being affected by these diversions. Let me talk about Indian tactics. In regard to hydro diplomacy, as somebody pointed out, that India wants to keep this issue bilateral, because in bilateral negotiations, in bilateral settings, it has an upper edge. And therefore, it doesn't want the involvement of a neutral expert, and particularly of a court of arbitration, because they are against, they're neuralgic about third-party arbitration or mediation or intercession. Keep it in the bilateral realm and deny all rights to Pakistan. Tactic number one. Tactic number two is delay, use dilatory tactics. The files and letters shuttle back and forth between Delhi and Islamabad about the provision of data on Bagliar and Kishan Ganga. And it takes years to exchange data. They are past masters in delaying the whole process. Mr. Ashfaq Mahmood would have experienced it firsthand. The third tactic that they use tension between India and Pakistan as a smokescreen to complete their dams. Somebody said that we come to know about these dams through the newspapers. Once we have learned about them, then they use this smokescreen to complete them rapidly. I'll give you two instances. From 1999 to 2002, the tensions between India and Pakistan were heightened, and it is during that period that India did the bulk of the work of the Bagliar Dam. True? And right now, our relations are tense again. We are not talking to each other. We do not have any bilateral engagement. And India is completing many dams on the two rivers that I mentioned, Chenab and Jhelum, and their tributaries. It's a good opportunity for them to complete these dams, and later on, they will present these dams as fait accompli to Pakistan and to the international community and to the World Bank. The fourth tactic that they use is that they directly influence the neutral expert and court of arbitration. They lobby with them. Not only lobby with them directly, but lobby with the governments or the countries that they belong to. Let me also tell you that India's tactics go beyond that. One tactic is intimidation. Narendra Modi is an angry man, of course. But it was not out of anger that he blurted out the statement of depriving Pakistan of the last drop of water. This is a cool and calculated move that he made, and I don't know how much of you watch, how many of you watch Indian television or the stuff that is spewed on the YouTube. There, analyst after analyst, these charlatans who present themselves as analysts, they advocate against the Indus Water Treaty, and they advocate its repeal and its revision. And they say that this was a great injustice that was done to India at that time by the leaders of India. They also use Kashmir card, as it was mentioned, I recall, during the construction of the Baghliyar Dam. They mobilized the entire Kashmiri community and propagated that Pakistan is against your interests. Pakistan is there to hurt your interests, because if this dam is completed, you would benefit. Forget about the technicalities, about the pondage, about the question whether it is run of the river or it is not. What are the specifications given by the treaty? So, but let me tell you, let me assure you, that whether it is the Vular Barrage, or whether it is Baghliyar, or whether it is Kishan Ganga, the people of Jammu and Kashmir, the people of occupied Kashmir are not deluded by Indian propaganda. They have shown wisdom and steadfastness in their opposition to the Indian rule, or they reject any kind of blandishment that would pit them against Pakistan. Let me talk about, very briefly, about Azad Kashmir. In Azad Kashmir, faced with this situation, we are also building a series of dams. They have become imperative for us. And recently we have completed 2 dams. I mean, they've been completed by Pakistan in collaboration with foreign entities. One is Patrind, 140 megawatt. The other is Neelam Jhelum, 969 megawatt. And we are planning many other dams like Azad Patan, Mal, Dudnial. Gulpur is about to be completed. This is on the river Punch, 102 megawatt. Jagran 2 we are going to complete, some 48 megawatt. I'm coming to Kohala. You from Azad Kashmir? And 2 projects have been approved under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. One is Karot, 720 megawatt. It is on the border of Rawalpindi and Azad Kashmir. And the second project is Kohala, which is 1124. These have been approved under the framework of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. The first project, the Karot project, Zubairi Saab is present here. It is moving with tremendous speed. You can give a testimony about that, but whenever I go to Holard or drive past the Karot site, there's always this flurry of heightened activity. And I believe that it would be ready by 2021-22. Kohala 23, 24, 25, other things remaining the same. All right. So, and this would resolve our problems partially. Let me tell you, in Azad Kashmir, our total requirement is 400 megawatt as of now. But in the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to produce 7,000 to 8,000 megawatt of electricity, which would come to Pakistani national grid. And I hope that by that time, our own demand for consumers and for industry would have increased to at least 2,000 megawatt. Even then there would be surplus which we would be contributing to Pakistan's national grid. One thing that I always point out, and I will not miss this opportunity, is that India calls itself an upper riparian state because it occupies part of Jammu and Kashmir. Otherwise, it would not be an upper riparian state. The message here is that these are your waters. I strongly believe that had the history of India and Pakistan, South Asia, followed its natural course in 1947, the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir would have been a part of Pakistan, and these waters, which you call upper riparian waters, would have been your waters. So, I'm coming towards the conclusion of my remarks. One is that I think Pakistan needs to evolve a very comprehensive, substantive water policy. It should have two dimensions. One is the external dimension, which, of course, would deal with India and other countries also in the neighborhood, because we have to conduct water diplomacy with other countries also. But the second pincer of this strategy would be internal. And in this regard, conservation of water, building of dams, afforestation, investment in environment, coming up with strategies to deal with the challenges of climate change. These are the important aspects which we must incorporate in this comprehensive water policy of Pakistan. Pakistan and India headed towards a nuclear winter. Is a war between the two countries inevitable? And I would say, Alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah Almighty, Pakistan has established strategic parity with India. India dare not attack Pakistan. And Pakistan would never attack India or escalate its tensions towards the nuclear level. Although we are not signatories to first strike or no first use, we are not signatory to that. And yet Pakistan demonstrates restraint and responsibility in that regard. I hope that India's adventurism, the so-called cold start, or the so-called farcical surgical strikes, do not escalate the situation between India and Pakistan at any point. I think it would be prudent for both India and Pakistan to de-link war and water. Nuclear capabilities of the two countries and the water issues. Water is for everybody, for the entire population of India and Pakistan. And they must be fairly and justly distributed. I think one advice was given by Mr. Ashfaq Mahmood, and I want to repeat it, that writing of his book should be a beginning, not an end. It should not be a one-off event. And as he advised in his book and during his presentation, our efforts should not be confined to lamentation and direction of anger against India. We should be skillful, resourceful, and for that you have to reach out. And in order to reach out, you have to build the muscles of your civil society and of your academic institutions and of your think tanks, so that you can mount this campaign. This pertains to the basic fundamental rights of your citizens, and therefore responsibilities in this regard cannot be neglected. I think this is a very significant contribution, a seminal contribution, I would say, which has been made, and let's build on this work that has been done by Mr. Ashfaq Mahmood, and my congratulations and compliments to you, sir. Thank you.
On behalf of Institute of Policy Studies, it is my pleasant obligation to present a vote of thanks. Before saying anything, let me start by saying that today, standing on this side and looking at you, I can safely and confidently say that tonight we all are much more educated and well informed on a very important topic, hydro-diplomacy. I stand humbled by saying these few words in presence of Honorable President of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, Sardar Masood Khan, for sharing his very thoughtful and thought-provoking ideas and practical information with all of the audience. So our very special thanks go to Sardar Masood Khan Sahib for sharing his thoughts to our highly valued audience. Secondly, it is my pleasant obligation also to thank the author of this book, Ashfaq Mahmood Sahib, for really opening up our minds to think and understand critically what exactly is the problem of waters and how it could be resolved at the end of the day. My special thanks also go to speakers and discussions who came up with their very thoughtful ideas on the topic. And of course, I could look while at the audience, there are other than senators from the Standing Committee on Water and Power. There are also academia represented here. There are also representatives of research institutes and think tanks present amongst us. There are also government functionaries, and there are also some Kashmiri brethren sitting in the audience, and some of our foreign friends also coming from different walks of life. So it was a house full audience listening to brilliant scholars like Ashfaq Mahmood Sahib and a very experienced, seasoned diplomat to whom I always follow, looking at his footprints starting from Beijing till today, my role model, Sardar Masood Khan Sahib. And of course, last but not least, thanking Executive President IPS Khalid Rahman Sahib for giving me this honor and opportunity to present this vote of thanks. I was asked just a few minutes before, and I really feel humbled and honored. Thank you so very much for your presence. The last but not least, the overwhelming presence of media here tonight is a great source of strength and encouragement to spread this message, which is not related to hydro-diplomacy only, but also the Kashmir dispute and the way we look at on this dispute and the way we look at the future of our two countries. I am sanguine and confident that media present here will spread the message of this event this afternoon and evening for a broad dissemination of information and knowledge. We were talking about knowledge for the common readers and citizens of this country, that we are grappling with the most difficult issues with India, but there is a way out. If this message, which was initiated by Ashfaq Mahmood Sahib by writing this excellent expose and book on the topic, and concluded by Sardar Masood Khan Sahib. If this message reaches to the people, I think we have won the day, and we will be the luckiest persons to listening to all the speakers, especially President Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you so very much for your patient listening, and your presence is much valued, and we look forward to continue that sort of interaction in the future as well.